The smirk on the businessman's face stretched wider when the elderly woman adjusted her glasses and leaned in, her voice trembling just slightly from age or nerves, or maybe both. She had the kind of presence that didn't command a room, but begged it softly to be gentle. No one ever noticed people like her. And maybe that was why the man felt bold enough to mutter, just loud enough for nearby ears, "If you can't handle basic banking, don't hold the line." The teller finally looked up, startled and apologetic. "I'm so sorry. How can I help you today?" The woman tried again, her hands shaking as she slid her purse onto the counter. I only want to check my balance. I think I pressed something wrong on the machine outside, and now I'm confused." She swallowed, embarrassed. "I don't want to cause any trouble." Her tone carried a kind of fragility that made the air shift, barely noticeable, but to someone paying attention, unmistakable. But the businessman's sigh cut through the space like a chalk screech. Unbelievable. He tapped his watch, checked the line, then muttered, "Some people really need to learn to keep up." A few people looked away. A few others stayed at the floor. No one stepped in. Except one. From the back of the line, a young man named Ethan lifted his head. He had been scrolling through photos of job applications he planned to submit. He'd been laid off 2 months ago and was barely piecing things together. But something in the woman's trembling posture made his chest tighten. He watched her hesitate before handing the teller her ID, as if even that small action felt like she was burdening someone. He couldn't explain why he stepped forward. Maybe the room felt too cold. Maybe the world felt too cruel. Or maybe he just couldn't stand the sound of someone being made to feel smaller than they already felt. "Hey," Ethan said softly as he moved closer. "Take your time. We're all human here." The old woman turned, surprised. Her eyes had that cloudiness that comes with age, but behind the haze was gratitude, raw, unfiltered. The businessman scoffed. "Mind your business." Ethan smiled calmly. "She is my business. Anyone could end up in her place one day. Even you." That caught a few people off guard. One woman near the front cleared her throat, almost as if permission had been granted for decency to exist again. The teller, perhaps encouraged, leaned forward and spoke to the elderly woman with gentleness. "Let me check for you. Don't worry about anything." Still, the woman looked anxious. She tugged on the frayed edge of her sleeve, blinking rapidly. I think someone told me I could lose my account if I didn't check it. I'm scared something happened. It's just, the money I have left is important." "What do you mean?" Ethan asked softly, careful not to overstep. She hesitated, thinking, weighing trust. "My husband's pension," she whispered. "He passed last year. It's all I have. I don't know these machines. I'm afraid I did something wrong." A silence fell around them, no longer awkward, but heavy with realization. The businessman's expression flickered, even if for a moment. Ethan reached out, not touching her, but offering steadiness with his presence. "You're not alone. Nobody here is going to rush you." The teller checked her account, typing quietly, but something changed in his face when he saw the screen. His brows knitted together, concern replacing politeness. The woman noticed instantly. Is everything okay?" The teller swallowed. "It looks like," he hesitated, glancing quickly at Ethan, then back to the screen. The old woman's grip tightened on the counter. "Please, don't hide it. Just tell me." But before he could, the businessman's phone chimed, and he snapped, "Ofo, can you just finish our transaction so the rest of us can get on with our lives?" Ethan turned sharply. "Do you hear yourself? She's scared. And I'm late." "Then leave," Ethan said. The room inhaled sharply. The businessman opened his mouth, then froze, because the teller's voice cracked as he finally said, "Your account shows several withdrawals you didn't make." The old woman blinked. "What?" And the businessman's phone slipped slowly from his hand as he stayed at the screen behind the counter, because one of the withdrawals had his name on it. Before the shock could settle, before anyone could truly react, the teller leaned in abruptly. "Do you have someone who helps you manage things? Or anybody you trust?" The old woman shook her head, voice cracking. "No, it was just me and him. Now it's just me." Her knees weakened, and Ethan stepped closer instinctively, steadying her with a gentle hand hovering near her back, ready if she needed it. The businessman's face went pale, and for the first time, he stopped smirking. The story paused in that breathless moment, just long enough for everyone in the room to feel the shift, the unraveling, the beginning of something none of them had expected. Then the elderly woman whispered, "Please, someone tell me what's happening." And the truth hovered, trembling, just a breath away. The teller's voice shook as he tried to explain, but the old woman's breath had already begun to flutter, small, uneven, frightened. Ethan noticed her hands trembling harder, her knuckles whitening as she clutched the edge of the counter like it was the only solid thing left in her world. The teller began gently. There were withdrawals made over the last 3 weeks, all from the same card. But the signature on each transaction doesn't match yours. Her lips parted. I don't understand. I barely use my card except for groceries. I never. She stopped, chest rising too fast. Ethan stepped beside her, lowering his voice. It's okay. Take a breath. We'll figure it out. But the businessman, Michael, stood frozen, his face drained of color. He stared at the transaction list displayed on the teller's monitor. One entry in particular glared back at him, a payment at a luxury watch shop. His own signature, clear as day. He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing like he'd been caught in a lie he didn't know how to escape. The old woman turned, confused by the sudden stillness around her. Did someone take my money? Her voice cracked on the word someone, as if the idea itself hurt. Ethan nodded slowly. It looks like someone might have used your card. Did you misplace it? Has anyone been helping you with errands or paperwork? She shook her head, eyes widening with fear. No, I keep it in my purse, always. Only I touch it. Could someone have bumped into you? Ethan asked softly, or distracted you at an ATM? The woman thought, brows knitting. I was at the grocery store last week. Someone said I dropped a coupon in. I bent down to pick it up. I thought it was strange because I don't use coupons. But, she blinked rapidly. But my purse was open when I got home. A cold realization washed through the room. Michael took a step backward. The old woman turned to him unknowingly, as if he might somehow offer clarity. Sir, do you know anything about this? You were behind me earlier. Did you see anything? His throat tightened. I don't. But Ethan stepped protectively between them, sensing the shift. Let's not jump to conclusions. You don't need any more stress right now. The woman nodded faintly, her shoulders shaking. The teller cleared his throat. We can freeze your account immediately, file a fraud report, and try to recover the lost funds. Don't worry, we'll fight this. Tears gathered in her eyes, but she blinked them away stubbornly. It's just, that money was for my medication. I was going to refill it today. She wiped her cheek. I've been cutting the pills in half to make them last. My doctor keeps warning me. But when you're alone, you learn to stretch things. The confession wasn't loud, yet it struck the room like a quiet earthquake. Even Michael's breath hitched. Ethan clenched his jaw. This is wrong. Whoever did this, whoever took advantage of you, will answer for it. But before he could say more, the woman whispered, Could you tell me how much is left? The teller hesitated, remorse shadowing his eyes. I'm really sorry. There's just $14.72 in your account. Her face fell, not with shock, but with a devastating kind of acceptance, as if disappointment had become an old companion she knew too well. Her shoulders sagged like someone letting go of a heavy coat they'd been forced to carry. Ethan inhaled sharply, feeling a sting behind his eyes. Michael stepped back again, nearly stumbling. The old woman swallowed. I see. I suppose I'll figure something out. It was the kind of sentence no one should ever have to say. Her voice didn't demand pity. It didn't cry for attention. It simply revealed a truth she had been living alone in the quiet corners of her life. And that quiet broke something inside Ethan. He turned to her, his tone gentle but firm. You shouldn't be figuring this out by yourself. Let us help. Somewhere behind them, the businessman tried to slip toward the door, but Ethan didn't notice. Not yet. The old woman clutched her purse tighter, embarrassed by her own struggle. I'm sorry for being a bother. I know people have their own lives. You're not a bother, Ethan said. You're a human being who deserves respect. Her lips trembled. It's been a long time since someone said that to me. The room softened, the tension turning into something else, something honest. Even the people in line lowered their phones, listening quietly, witnessing something they didn't expect when they walked in. For a moment, it felt like the world paused, not with fear, but with possibility. And now, if you were there in that moment, seeing her standing alone with everything falling apart, what would you have done? Be honest and comment it below. And if words won't form, tap like to show that compassion still matters. But in the bank, the old woman tried to stand stronger than she felt. I'll just go home. I can return tomorrow when I've thought things through. As she turned, her knees buckled just slightly. Ethan moved faster than reflex, hands out, steadying her before she fell. He said softly, "You're not walking out of here alone." And behind them, Michael froze. Completely, utterly, frozen. Because Ethan had just stepped to the telescreen to ask a question, and he was staring directly at the transaction signed with Michael's name. The truth, sharp as broken glass, finally cut through the last veil. Ethan didn't raise his voice. He didn't cause a scene. He simply stared at the luxury watch purchase on the telescreen, then slowly turned his head toward Michael, the businessman who had mocked the old woman moments earlier. Michael froze mid-step, guilt flickering across his face like a faulty light bulb. His polished confidence cracked in the silence, and for the first time, he looked small. The old woman, unaware of the storm building, steadied herself against the counter. "Young man," she whispered to Ethan, "thank you for holding me. I didn't mean to trouble you." "You could never trouble me," Ethan murmured. But the teller saw the screen too and glanced between Ethan and Michael with growing alarm. He lowered his voice, leaning toward Ethan. "Do you think he—" Ethan raised a hand gently. Not yet. He didn't want the woman to panic again. Still, the tension curled through the air, tightening the room like invisible wire. Michael shifted his weight, throat constricting. I don't know why my name is on that screen. Maybe someone stole my signature. Or maybe it's a glitch." Ethan stepped toward him, slow and steady. A glitch? On a luxury watch purchase made less than a mile from here. His tone wasn't aggressive, just painfully honest. "Come on, the truth deserves daylight." Michael's gaze darted toward the door again, but someone in line stepped aside awkwardly, blocking his path without meaning to. The old woman finally noticed the strange silence behind her. She turned, eyes moving between the two men. "Is something wrong?" Ethan hesitated, not wanting to crush her with news she wasn't ready for. "I think someone made purchases under your account, and one of them might involve this man." Michael's jaw tightened. "I said I didn't." "You were in the store," the teller interjected softly. "The system logs show your ID was scanned." A few gasps whispered through the line. The old woman's lips parted in shock. "So, did you use my card?" The question came out fractured, fragile, as if she feared the answer. Michael's shoulders collapsed an inch, shame slipping through his polished exterior. I didn't mean." He stopped, eyes burning with something close to panic. "It wasn't supposed to be her money. I didn't know whose it was." The old woman blinked, confused. "But how did you even get my card?" Michael rubbed a trembling hand over his face. "When you bent down last week, I was the one who told you that you dropped something." The blood drained from her face. The whole bank seemed to inhale in disbelief. He kept talking, the truth unraveling like a frayed rope under strain. "Your purse was open. I saw the card. And I don't know what came over me. I'd been drowning in debt. The store wouldn't let me leave without collateral, and I thought—" He stopped, voice breaking. "I thought I could put it back before anyone noticed." The old woman swayed slightly, stunned, as if each word struck her like a small blow. "You stole from her over and over," Ethan said quietly, anger simmering beneath calm. 3 weeks' worth of withdrawals. Michael flinched. "I didn't mean to keep going. I kept telling myself it was temporary. Just until my next bonus. I thought she wouldn't." needed immediately. The woman let out a small, wounded breath. It's all I have, she whispered. Every dollar is a breath I can't afford. Michael's face crumpled, but guilt was not enough. The teller picked up his phone. I have to report this, he said gently. This is serious. The old woman pressed a hand to her chest, eyes glistening. I don't even know what to say. Ethan placed a comforting hand near her shoulder, not touching without permission, but offering warmth with presence alone. You don't have to say anything. You've already been through enough. Michael took another shaky step back, his facade in ruins. Please, I'm begging you. If this goes on record, I'll lose everything. My job, my family, my... Almost lost her medication, Ethan cut in. Her stability, her peace of mind. The old woman's voice wavered. Why would you do this? You look like someone who doesn't need to steal. Michael's chest tightened painfully. That's what makes it worse. I know. The teller continued filling out the fraud report, but Ethan noticed the woman was trembling again, this time from more than fear. It was betrayal. Deep, quiet betrayal. I trusted people, she whispered. Even strangers. I never imagined someone would. She stopped, unable to finish. Her grief sat heavily in the space between them. Have you ever had someone show up for you when no one else did? Write yes, and tell me their name. Maybe gratitude can travel farther than we think. The old woman sagged onto the small waiting bench. Ethan sat beside her, giving her a moment to breathe. Michael stood still, guilt consuming his once sharp demeanor. And somewhere in her trembling silence, the old woman whispered something no one expected. Please, I don't want him arrested. The entire bank turned toward her in stunned disbelief. Ethan's eyes widened. He hurt you. I know, she said softly, but I also know what it feels like to have the world fall apart. I wouldn't wish that on anyone. Her mercy stunned even Michael. But Ethan saw something deeper, a story behind her gentleness he had yet to understand. And that story was about to rise to the surface. The bank remained silent, stunned by the old woman's plea. Her palms rested softly on her lap, trembling not from fear now, but from the weight of compassion that seemed too heavy for someone so fragile to carry. Ethan leaned forward, voice low. Mercy is powerful, but forgiveness doesn't mean you need to suffer more. She turned her cloudy eyes toward him. Young man, I've had enough suffering for one life. I don't wish to hand it out to others, not even to him. Michael swallowed hard, shame thick in his throat. I don't deserve your kindness, he whispered. She didn't look at him. No, you don't. But sometimes we give what isn't earned because the world doesn't survive otherwise. Her words landed somewhere deep, somewhere old wounds hide. Ethan, still beside her, watched her carefully. May I ask, why you're so quick to offer grace? He wasn't challenging her. He wanted to understand. The woman sighed softly. Because someone once showed it to me when I didn't deserve it either. Ethan's brows lifted gently. Would you tell me? Her gaze drifted to the floor, as if replaying a reel only she could see. The fluorescent lights hummed above them, the world moving on the other side of the glass doors. But inside the bank, time seemed to hold still for her story. She clasped her fingers together. Years ago, before my husband passed, we had a son. A good boy, gentle-hearted. Her lips trembled. But gentle hearts bruise easily. He fell into the wrong crowd. Made mistakes. Terrible ones. Michael blinked, suddenly listening like his life depended on each word. The old woman continued. One night, he stole. Got caught. We were terrified, certain we'd lose him to the system. But the man he stole from, he refused to press charges. He said something I've never forgotten. She inhaled shakily. We save people when we can, not punish them when they're already drowning. The silence that followed was thick enough to touch. The old woman wiped at a tear. Our boy turned his life around after that. He became the man we always prayed he'd be. But then, we lost him in a car accident. Her voice cracked. I still wonder how much life he could have lived if someone hadn't saved him that night. She turned her head slowly, finally facing Michael. That's why I can't take your future away. even if you took from mine. Michael covered his face with a trembling hand. The entire bank felt different now, warmer, heavier, raw. Ethan placed a hand lightly near her arm. That was incredibly brave of you to share. She nodded gently, breathing through old pain. The teller, humbled, closed the fraud report halfway. If you don't want to press charges, we won't force you. But we still need a way to recover your funds. Michael lowered his hand. I'll pay it back. His voice wavered but was firm. Every last cent. And more if she needs it. I swear. Ethan narrowed his eyes, not convinced. Words are easy. Michael nodded. Then I'll show actions. Starting now. He stepped toward the counter, pulled out his wallet, and set down several crisp bills, more than the old woman had lost. But the woman pressed her hand over his. I don't want your guilt money, she whispered. I want you to be better. Michael's eyes filled. I will. I promise. Ethan watched him, reading every flicker of his expression. He wasn't sure if Michael deserved that mercy, but he trusted the woman's instinct more than his own anger. Still, the weight of everything hung thick in the air, pressing on everyone's hearts. And now, it's your turn. Share one good thing, big or small, that you've done recently. Write it below so someone scrolling through might remember that kindness still lives in quiet corners of the world. The old woman silently wiped her cheeks, and Ethan gently guided her back to the bench to sit again. She leaned back, exhausted by the emotional storm. Ethan, she murmured, may I ask something? Anything, he said. She looked up at him, eyes soft. Why are you helping me? You don't know me. Ethan hesitated. His throat tightened around memories he rarely shared. Because someone helped me once too, he whispered. At a moment I had nothing left. Sometimes compassion is the only thing we can give when life takes everything else. Her fingers twitched toward his hand, not grabbing, just brushing lightly, a thank you carved in silence. Michael stood a few feet away, overcome by regret. He watched them, insecure and shaken. For the first time, he saw humanity instead of inconvenience. And it terrified him, how blind he had been. The teller came around the counter. We can work on restoring your account. You won't be left without help. She nodded slowly. Thank you, Day. But the teller's expression softened. Is there someone at home with you? Anyone who checks on you? The old woman shook her head slowly. Not anymore. Ethan felt something inside him twist painfully. Loneliness shouldn't sit on anyone's shoulders, especially not someone so kind. Then we'll figure that out too, Ethan said softly. Michael looked up like he wanted to speak, wanted to offer something, but he swallowed the words, unsure if he even deserved to. Before Ethan could say more, the woman whispered, You remind me of my son. Ethan's chest ached at the tenderness in her tone. But before the warmth could settle, the bank door swung open, and a police officer stepped inside, confusion on his face. Someone had called earlier about suspicious withdrawals, and he had come to investigate. Michael went white as paper, and the woman's breath caught in her throat. The officer stepped into the bank with steady footsteps, his uniform dampened slightly by the drizzle outside. He scanned the room, noticing right away the tension that clung to the air like static. Conversations died mid-sentence, bodies shifted uneasily, and all eyes, nervous, startled, guilty, fell on him. Afternoon, he said calmly, adjusting the radio clip to his shoulder. We got a report about suspicious withdrawals linked to this branch. Is the account holder present? The old woman's breath hitched. She shrank back instinctively, her fingers grappling for the edge of the bench. Ethan leaned closer, whispering, It's okay. I'm right here. Michael felt his lungs seize. His guilt was no longer a private ghost. It had a badge, a name, and the power to destroy what little remained of his carefully crafted life. The teller approached the officer first, speaking quietly. Yes, officer, we have the account holder here and the individual involved. Michael's knees wobbled. The officer nodded. Let's handle this calmly. He turned toward the elderly woman, softening his expression. Are you all right? She tried to speak, but her voice cracked. I think so. Ethan answered for her, steady but respectful. She's shaken. Someone used her card without permission. Michael exhaled shakily. The truth was now carved in the air, undeniable, irreversible. The officer shifted his attention to him. Sir, I'm going to need to ask you some questions. Michael swallowed. I know. But before anything more could unfold, the old woman raised a trembling hand. Officer, before you say anything, please. I don't want him arrested. The officer paused mid-step, genuinely surprised. He committed a financial crime against you. I know. Her voice was steady but soft. But if I take everything from him, then what does that make me? I don't want to harm another life. Michael blinked back tears, not the polite, surface-level guilt of someone caught, but the piercing kind that comes when mercy slices deeper than punishment ever could. The officer said gently, the law still requires documentation, but if you won't press charges, the consequences will be different. However, we need a statement. The old woman nodded slowly. Michael stepped forward, voice trembling. Please let me speak first. Ethan watched him carefully, ready to intervene. Michael turned to the officer. Everything they said is true. I took her card. I used it. Not once, multiple times. His voice cracked. I was desperate. I told myself a story that made the theft seem smaller, manageable. But it wasn't. I took what she needed to survive. And I'm ready to accept whatever comes. A weighted silence followed. The officer wrote notes quietly, jaw tense but understanding. Thank you for your honesty. Michael wasn't finished. He turned to the old woman. No excuses, no bargaining, just raw remorse. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even expect to be looked at. But I swear to you, I'll repay everything, and I'll do better. I don't know who I've become, but I don't want to stay that man. The old woman stayed at him, breath shaky. I can't take back what you did, but I won't ruin your life. My son, he was given a second chance. I'll pass that gift on. Michael's tears fell silently. The teller exhaled heavily, letting the moment breathe. The officer nodded. Then here's what we'll do. I'll file this as an incident with a voluntary repayment agreement. No arrest, no charges pressed, per the victim's request. But, sir, he looked at Michael sternly, this will only stay off your record if the full amount is paid back within the required time frame. Michael nodded vigorously. I'll do it. Every cent. Ethan looked at the old woman, admiration softening his features. You're remarkable, he whispered. She shook her head. No, just tired of choosing bitterness. In that fragile stillness, something shifted in the room. Not forgiveness, not yet, but recognition. That sometimes healing takes the shape of mercy. And sometimes mercy hurts more than justice. If that moment hit you deeply, leave a red heart hash. Sometimes a small symbol says what our hearts can't put into words. The officer finished his notes and stepped back. I'll escort you home if you'd like. It might be safer for today. She hesitated, glancing at Ethan. I would appreciate that. Ethan nodded softly. I'll walk with you too. The officer smiled gently. That's fine. Before they moved, the teller approached. Once your account is restored, we'll help you set up protection so this never happens again. You're not alone. The woman exhaled, relief softening her shoulders. Michael watched her, guilt twisting into something like resolve. Thank you. Truly. She didn't answer, not because she was angry, but because her heart was simply too full, too tired, too human. Ethan helped her stand, lifting her purse with gentle care. The officer opened the door, the cool outside air washing into the room. As they stepped out into the drizzle, something in the old woman's story still tugged at the edges of Ethan's thoughts. Something she had not yet said. Something deeper. Something waiting to unfold. And that truth was about to change everything. The rain had softened into a mist, turning the streetlights into glowing halos as the officer gently guided the old woman outside. Ethan stayed close beside her, matching his steps to her slower, careful pace. She leaned only slightly on his arm, stubbornly trying to walk on her own, though her breath trembled every few steps. Cars passed with quiet splashes across wet pavement. The world was moving, indifferent. But for the three of them, everything felt suspended, like the drizzle itself held its breath around them. "You're sure you're all right to walk?" Ethan asked gently. She nodded, though her voice wavered. "Yes, dear. I've walked through storms much heavier than this one." The officer opened his umbrella over them. "Your home isn't far from here, right?" "Just a few blocks," she whispered. "I like the walk. It reminds me I'm still alive." Ethan exchanged a worried glance with the officer. Her coat was too thin for the cold, and her shoes looked worn enough to feel every pebble on the sidewalk. About halfway down the street, she paused and pressed a hand to her chest. Ethan steadied her. Are you feeling okay?" She forced a small smile. "Just a little tired, that's all. I haven't slept much." "Why not?" Ethan asked softly. She hesitated, and in that pause, something in her cracked open. "Because I didn't want to look at my bills anymore," she whispered. "I kept them in a drawer, pretending they'd shrink if I ignored them. I used to have more courage when my husband was alive. He handled the things that scared me." Her breath hitched. "Now it's just me, and I'm doing the best I can, even when it's not very good." Ethan swallowed hard. "You're doing more than enough." She shook her head. "No, I've been falling apart quietly for months. I didn't want anyone to notice." A tear slipped down. "I didn't think anyone would care." The officer's voice softened. "You matter. You really do." She wiped her cheek with the edge of her sleeve. "Most days, it feels like I'm fading, like the world walks through me." They reached an intersection where a flickering street lamp buzzed, casting them in a pale, wavering glow. She stopped again, glancing up as if the light itself reminded her of something. "I never told you my name," she murmured. Ethan smiled softly. "That's okay. You can tell me when you're ready." She looked at him with a fragile sweetness. "It's Grace." Ethan let the name settle warmly. "Grace suits you." She blushed faintly. "My mother said she named me that because she hoped I'd become someone gentle." Her gaze drifted. "I hope she'd be proud." "She would," Ethan said immediately. But Grace lowered her eyes. "I'm not so sure." Ethan tilted his head. "Why would you say that?" She hesitated, then her voice broke. "Because I was part of why my son spiraled. I hid his troubles from my husband. I thought protecting him meant shielding him from consequences. But all it did was make his mistakes grow heavier. I was so afraid of losing him, I didn't realize I was letting him drown." The confession hung between them, delicate and crushing. Ethan whispered, "Grace, we all make mistakes for love. That doesn't make us bad." She closed her eyes, letting rain mix with her tears. "I still carry the guilt. Even after he changed. Even after he died. I feel like I failed him, and my husband." Ethan shook his head. "You didn't fail anyone." Her voice trembled. "Then why does it still hurt like it happened yesterday?" The officer stepped back slightly, giving them space. Grace looked at Ethan, the kind of look a mother gives a son she's afraid she'll disappoint. "Do you think forgiveness is possible, even for someone like me? And now I want you to answer something honestly. Could you forgive after what she shared? Type forgive if yes, or never if the pain would be too deep to carry." Grace wrapped her arms around herself, shivering lightly. Ethan placed his coat gently over her shoulders without saying a word. She flinched at the unexpected warmth, then sank into it gratefully. "Grace," Ethan said softly, "there's nothing in your story that needs punishment. You loved, you tried, you protected. Humans break sometimes in the trying. That's not failure. That's life." Her lips quivered. "Ethan, why do you care so much?" He looked at her, and the drizzle made his eyes shine. "Because I know what it's like to think the world stopped caring." Her expression softened with understanding. Because in her pain, she had recognized something in him. A quiet fracture he carried too. They walked the last block in thoughtful silence, the night air filled with the soft rhythm of rain and unspoken truths. Grace's small apartment building finally came into view. Dim lights, cracked steps, and a mailbox with her faded name on it. The officer nodded. "We'll get you inside safe." But before they reached the door, Grace stopped abruptly. Her breath hitched. Her hand flew to her chest. Her knees buckled. Grace! Ethan gasped, catching her before she hit the ground. Her eyes fluttered, pain tightening her face. I feel dizzy, she whispered. The officer was already grabbing his radio. Stay with us, Ethan pleaded, lowering her carefully to the steps. Grace's voice barely rose above a breath. Ethan, if anything happens, promise you won't let me be alone. Rain blurred everything, and Grace's eyes began to close. Grace's body went limp in Ethan's arms, and a surge of panic ripped through him with a force that nearly stole his breath. The rain, once gentle, now felt like icy needles pricking his skin as he cradled her against the dimly lit steps. Grace! Grace, stay with me, he urged, voice cracking. Her eyelids fluttered, barely. Her breaths came shallow, uneven. Too uneven. The officer knelt beside them, speaking firmly into his radio. Dispatch, Code 3, elderly woman, possible cardiac event. We need an ambulance ASAP. Location, Maple and 7th. The radio crackled as confirmation came through. Ethan brushed wet strands of hair from Grace's forehead. Grace, please, look at me. She managed the faintest smile, trembling with effort. I'm sorry, dear. Don't apologize, Ethan whispered fiercely. You're going to be okay. Help is coming. Her gaze unfocused for a moment before settling back on him. I didn't want you to see me like this. Grace, stop. His voice shook. You're not alone. Not tonight. Not ever again if I can help it. Thunder rumbled faintly somewhere in the distance. Grace's fingers twitched against his. You remind me so much of him. Your son. She nodded weakly. He always tried to hold the world together, even when his own pieces were falling apart. Ethan felt something shatter quietly inside him. Grace, he whispered, I'm not going anywhere. Her breathing hitched, once, twice, and her eyes squeezed shut from pain. Ethan's heart raced with fear. The officer pressed 2 fingers to her wrist. Pulse is weak. She's fading. Just keep her talking. Ethan leaned close. Grace, listen to me. You're strong. You survived losing so much already. You can survive this too. She blinked slowly, tears leaking into the rain. I'm so tired, Ethan. I know, he whispered, voice breaking. But stay. Please stay. A distant siren began to echo through the streets, faint but approaching. The officer stood and waved toward the road, guiding the ambulance. Ethan tightened his hold, his own breath trembling. Grace, you've got so much left to see. Moments waiting for you. People who still need you. She swallowed, a tear slipping down her cheek. Do you really believe that? I do. Her lips quivered with the ghost of a smile. Then maybe I'll try. The sirens grew louder, closer. But as they waited, Grace suddenly looked past Ethan toward the sky, her expression softening. I used to talk to him. You know, she whispered. My husband. I'd sit by the window and tell him about my day. Tell him I missed him. Tell him I was scared. Her voice thinned to a fragile thread. I thought he wasn't listening anymore. Ethan squeezed her hand. Maybe he was. She let out a breath that trembled with sorrow. I wish he'd send me a sign. A paramedic rushed up the next second, kneeling on her other side. What happened? She collapsed, Ethan said, voice urgent. She complained of dizziness earlier, pain in her chest. The second paramedic opened a kit and began attaching monitors. BP's crashing. She's in distress. Grace, Ethan whispered, trying to center her. Stay with me. Focus on my voice. Her eyes fluttered open again, glistening. Ethan, thank you. You'll thank me after you're in the hospital, he said, forcing a smile through trembling lips. The paramedics lifted her gently onto a stretcher. Grace winced, her fragile hands gripping the blanket. We're taking you in, one paramedic said. We'll stabilize you on the way. Ethan took a step toward the ambulance instinctively, but the officer placed a gentle hand on his arm. Let them work. I can't just leave her, Ethan breathed. You're not leaving, the officer reassured. You're following her. Ethan swallowed hard, his throat burning. Yes, I am. Grace looked toward him one more time as they lifted her into the ambulance. Don't disappear, Ethan. I won't. I promise. The doors closed. The siren wailed to life. The ambulance sped into the night. Ethan stood in the rain, watching the red and blue lights reflect off the wet pavement, his chest tight and aching. The officer stood beside him, silent but steady. The drizzle softened again, like the sky was exhaling. And in that moment, in the fragile space between fear and hope, Ethan whispered a prayer he hadn't spoken in years. Please, let her live. If you believe love still wins in the end, comment Amen. Let's fill this moment with hope. Someone scrolling through might need to see it. Ethan finally exhaled shakily. I'm going to the hospital. The officer nodded. I'll drive you. As they headed toward the patrol car, Ethan glanced back at the steps where Grace had collapsed. Her small, soaked handprint still shimmered faintly on the concrete. He made himself a promise right there, beneath the dim street lamp's glow. He would not let Grace slip through the cracks again. He would not let her fade quietly from a world that had overlooked her for too long. And he had no idea that what awaited him at the hospital would change both of their lives. Forever. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and quiet worry. Ethan hurried through the sliding doors with rain still dripping from his hair and sleeves, the officer just a step behind him. At the reception desk, the fluorescent lights made everything feel too bright, too sharp, too real. Grace Miller, Ethan told the nurse, breathless. Elderly woman, cardiac distress. They brought her in a few minutes ago. The nurse typed quickly. She's in emergency 3. Doctors are working on stabilizing her. You can wait in the family hall. Family? Ethan echoed. She gave him a small, understanding smile. You're here for her. That counts. Ethan swallowed, heart tightening. He walked into the waiting area. Nearly empty, dimly lit, the kind of quiet place where fear sits beside you like a shadow. He lowered himself into a plastic chair, elbows on his knees, hands clasped so tightly they trembled. The officer sat beside him. You did good tonight. No, Ethan whispered. I didn't do anything. She shouldn't be alone in there. You stayed, the officer said. That's more than most people do. Ethan didn't answer. His chest felt like a fist was wrapped around it. Minutes stretched, slow and merciless. He kept replaying every moment. Grace clutching her chest, her trembling voice, the soft, don't disappear. He wouldn't. He couldn't. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the ER doors swung open and a doctor approached them, middle-aged, calm but tired. Family of Grace Miller. Ethan stood instantly. I'm not her family, but I'm with her. The doctor nodded gently. She had a cardiac episode brought on by physical strain and prolonged emotional stress. Her heart's weak, but she's stable for now. Ethan exhaled shakily, relief buckling his knees. She's asking for you, the doctor added. Room 12. Ethan's voice wavered. Thank you. He followed the doctor down the hall, the officer remaining behind to fill out paperwork. At the doorway, Ethan paused. Grace lay in the hospital bed, small and pale beneath the white sheets. Machines hummed quietly beside her. Her eyes were closed, until the sound of his footsteps made them flicker open. Ethan, she whispered, voice soft but steady enough to melt him. He pulled a chair closer, sitting beside her. Hey, you scared me. She managed a worn smile. I scared myself too. He held her hand gently, careful not to disturb the four. Her fingers were cold, but they curled weakly around his. You stayed, she murmured. Of course I stayed. She stared at him with a softness he hadn't felt from anyone in years. You remind me so much of my boy, not in the way you look, but the way you care. He had that same quiet bravery. Tears shimmered at the corners of her eyes. You saved me tonight. Ethan shook his head, voice cracking. No, Grace. You saved me. She blinked, surprised. He swallowed. You reminded me that people can still be good. That kindness isn't gone. I haven't believed that in a long time. Her lips trembled. Oh, Ethan. He hesitated, then said something he hadn't planned, something that rose straight from the part of his soul he'd kept hidden. You're not alone anymore. He whispered. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. Grace's breath caught, not from fear, but from something like comfort long overdue. Ethan, she whispered, squeezing his hand faintly. Every soul deserves someone who refuses to walk away. He nodded, tears burning. Then let me be that someone for you. She smiled, fragile and radiant all at once. For a long moment, neither spoke. Rain tapped softly against the hospital windows, a gentle rhythm soothing the fear that had clung to the night. Then Grace whispered, Can I tell you a secret? Always. She looked at him with tired hope. I think my husband finally sent me that sign. Ethan's chest tightened with warmth. I think so too. A stillness settled, peaceful, tender, full of something that felt like healing. And now, if this story touched something deep in you, don't leave silently. Tap like, not for me, but for Grace. For a woman who carried loss, loneliness, and fear, yet still chose kindness. Your one click is a way of saying, I felt your pain, and I honor your strength. Grace closed her eyes again, drifting into rest, her fingers still curled around Ethan's. The doctor stepped quietly into the doorway. She'll need support when she goes home, he whispered. Recovery will be slow. Ethan nodded. She won't be alone. Not anymore. As the doctor left, Ethan stayed beside Grace, watching her chest rise and fall. Slowly, steadily, beautifully. Outside the window, the storm finally eased, leaving the world washed clean. Ethan leaned back in the chair, letting the quiet embrace him. For the first time in a long time, he believed something he thought he'd forgotten, that even the smallest kindness can rewrite a life. That mercy can heal wounds justice can't touch, and that sometimes two completely different strangers cross paths, because fate intends for them to save each other. Final moral: be gentle with the world. You never know whose last bit of hope might be resting quietly in their hands. Sometimes, offering kindness doesn't just change their story. It rewrites your own.